Okay guys, I'm gonna be honest with you. The Mandalorian has never been my favorite show. It feels a little small. I mean, the first season was really fun, and then the second season opened up the world a little bit. But there was always something missing in the story for me, and I think it was really just a lack of scale and purpose to the story. This, among many other reasons, is why I liked Andor quite a lot more. This is really just my own personal preference. It's not a good objective reason why you shouldn't like The Mandalorian. I think this is why it's very important for reviewers, critics, to reveal what their biases are before they give a review. Anyway, some of the best stories are minimalistic in nature, and The Mandalorian has really had this steady theme all along. But then Chapter 23 came out. That was the most recent episode of the third season, and it blew me away. Spoiler alert. This is perhaps one of the best pieces of Star Wars content I have seen, not only since Andor, but perhaps since Disney brought the franchise in the first place. It took 3.5 seasons for Favreau and Filoni to build up these characters, from the various Mandalorian factions, the Imperial Remnant, to even Baby Gogurt and his robo-nanny. And it's all paid off tremendously in this one episode. I mean, the stolen fleet rising up and then doing a flyover of Navarro. This is Star Wars, I think, I hope, returning to glorious form. And what? Thrawn is coming back, and we get to see his second-in-command, Admiral Pellaeon. There's also Brandol Hux, father of Demon Ginger Armitage Hux, creator of the First Order Stormtrooper program. I'm completely freaking out about this, guys. Like the Children of the Watch, Disney Star Wars has been in movie exile, hiding in a cave, trying to figure out what Star Wars actually means through all of these TV shows. And I believe we're finally at the point where Disney Star Wars can be allowed to come out of exile, because I think they've done due diligence to a certain degree and they're ready to create a movie. And that's because they remembered it's not about the big explosions and fleets and lightsaber battles. Those things are really cool, but only if we care about the characters that are doing the fighting. Watching Paz Vizsla go from a hothead who pulls out vibroblades at the smallest transgressions to, well, to be fair, still a hothead who pulls out a vibroblade at the smallest transgressions, but who's also an individual who sacrifices his life in an epic last stand fit for a Spartan or Ganner Izod. It's not even really character progression. Like, Paz doesn't change at all. Instead, the audience's perception of Paz changes. You begin to realize that you need someone like Paz when you're living in such a dangerous world where literally there are factions and criminals hunting you for your armor. You need a guy who can be strong, who can handle carrying a Gatling gun that really belongs mounted on a starship. And you can't just toss Paz Vizsla away the second you get out of the jungle. That's because for you to get out of the jungle, you needed Paz in the first place. We have to realize that just because he occasionally says toxic things and does toxic things, it doesn't make his character completely repulsive and unredeemable. Now, there are a lot of things to talk about in this episode. From a lore standpoint, I almost did like a review / Easter egg reveal kind of thing, but those videos are boring and other channels will do that. Instead, I want to talk about something that kind of hit me as I was watching the Mandalorians return to the surface of their planet, and we realized that what was once thought of as a desolate and barren land was teeming with all sorts of dangerous life. I realized that this entire show, The Mandalorians, it's actually a beautifully concealed story about Star Wars and Star Wars fandom. No, seriously, this is not a BS theory. This is actually a real thing. There's really no hiding it. I mean, Star Wars and its fandom have been in a bad situation lately, just like Mandalorian and the Mandalorians. The Force Awakens was so promising. It was a reboot of Star Wars, and even the story was familiar. Kind of like when Bo-Katan cries and the Rebels defeated the Imperial forces on Mandalore and retook it. I'm sure songs were sung about how this was familiar to when Bo-Katan retook Mandalore from Maul. Yeah, guys, this is an allegory. Star Wars, the franchise we grew up loving, well, that is Mandalore. And the Mandalorians, that's us, the fans. When Episode 8 came out as a standalone film, it was probably the best in the trilogy. I know for some of you guys that's like blasphemy, but hold on. The problem with Episode 8 was that it completely deviated from the setup in the first film and then left the finale without the setup it needed to finish the story. It was a betrayal for many fans who invested a lot of time into this franchise, and that's kind of when things started falling apart. It's reminiscent of when Bo-Katan gathered all the Mandalorians back on Mandalore just to be slaughtered during the Great Purge. So yeah, that was the moment when the fandom really began to split apart and divide. Two factions emerged, pro-sequel and the anti-sequel people, and it was like partisan politics. It was terrible. In Episode 9, well, that was almost universally hated by those who enjoyed Episode 7, by those who enjoyed Episode 8, And by those who hated everything. Oh, and if you liked episode 9, don't worry. I'm just making large generalizations to get this theory across. I really don't care what you like. I think you're free to like anything you want. Anyway, when the sequels ended, the fans sort of just scattered in every direction. And we became a diaspora, like after the Purge of Mandalore. That's what happened to the Mandalorians. You have the purist fans who, like the Children of the Watch, adhered to the old ways, to the prequels or original trilogy. Some even hated The Force Awakens and had chosen to distance themselves away from the rest of the fandom since then. The purist fans, they live in the past, fighting old battles, reliving old glories. They like rereading the Legends materials, rewatching the old films, but they're afraid of change. They are confused by this new world that has emerged out of Star Wars lore. Some more extreme members of this faction, a small group, don't like seeing female characters in lead roles or too much diversity in their Star Wars. They see this as political messaging, virtue signaling, instead of maybe Disney just trying to create characters on screen that reflect their viewers. But to say that these individuals are all xenophobic and evil is an oversimplification of a complicated group of people with legitimate gripes and concerns. And the sequel fans, just like the modern Mandalorians, well, they are equally as guilty of being prejudiced, but against the, purist fans / Children of the Watch. Which is why most of these purist fans, they remain anonymous, whether in the forums or in the YouTube comments. They don't show their faces, they keep their helmets on, because who wants to be judged by a large group of people who think you're a racist just for not liking a series of shows? These new Mandalorians, these sequel fans, they also have a sense of great loss too. They know that Mandalore / Star Wars is not what it once was. But instead of looking at the past, they cling on to every piece of Star Wars content that's given to them. Whether it's the High Republic or Visions or the Resistance cartoon. Even if some of these things are subpar Star Wars content, they don't care. They are mercenaries for content, and as long as the content keeps coming, they remain fans. I mean, neither side really gets it right. Everyone's relationship with Mandalore and Star Wars is a little bit messed up. And unfortunately, the fandom has spent so much time fighting each other, they've forgotten who's actually responsible for this great disaster. It's not the purist fans' fault for hating Episode 8. It definitely deviated from the original story that was being told in Episode 7. And for those who liked Episode 8, they have every right to. Rian Johnson is a very capable director. I mean, just look at Looper or Knives Out. He knows what he's doing. Yeah, both sides have forgotten who the true enemies are, the individuals who bought Star Wars, and then basically created a trilogy without any plan at all, so that there was like no continuity between these, 3 movies. I mean, they even had this idea of using 3 different directors. Like, what the hell? Now, Disney or Lucasfilm, or at least portions of this corporation, they are the empire, the organization that has destroyed our beloved franchise in one careless move. They are the ones who are responsible for the great purge of Star Wars and all of the fandom. I mean, Dave Filoni, he kind of understands this, and Jon Favreau, well, he comes from another cinematic universe that has a lot of the same problems. This scene where the Children of the Watch and the modern Mandos meet is supposed to represent the rapprochement between all of the Star Wars fandom. Yes, Star Wars is a mess, but this time around, we might actually be able to save it. I know, you laugh, I laugh, ha ha ha. We've all been down this road. We've all seen how many times they've tried to reboot Star Wars, and, how many times have the Mandalorians tried to retake Mandalore. What makes this time any different? Well, I really do think Favreau and Filoni are a very well-made pairing. I mean, they have all the tools necessary to pull this off. Filoni is a direct inheritor of the Star Wars story. He was mentored by George Lucas himself, and he understands how important this franchise is, not only for newer generations to learn from, but also for the older fans. His only weakness is he's an animator. His story writing abilities, his directing abilities are still not up to par with some of the more talented people in the industry. Which is kind of what Jon Favreau brings to the equation. This man single-handedly saved Marvel and created the modern MCU. And I remember when The Mandalorian came out, it definitely felt a bit different. I might not have liked the smaller, minimalistic approach to the story, but I couldn't deny that I was, transfixed on what was going on screen. I remember first seeing Baby Gogurt, Holy by Thy Name, in the middle of the pandemic. I had hoped he would save us all from the fear and anger everyone felt from being trapped inside. And I still believe that he is the one who can reunite Star Wars fandom. By carefully finding things that both sides like, and there are a lot because we're all Star Wars fans, Filoni has slowly created characters and storylines that we actually care about. And now as the third season of The Mandalorian is coming to an end, we all see the beginning of the future. The Star Wars TV series are going to lead into Thrawn returning. We will see the Imperial Remnant occupy the New Republic while the First Order quietly gathers steam in the unknown region. Just like how the prequels were poorly accepted at first and then rehabilitated by the Clone Wars series and other content, Filoni is trying to bridge the gap between The Mandalorian and the sequel trilogy. Filoni is trying to bring the old fans and the new fans together. I mean, Filoni is one of the only individuals who's constantly going back into Legends trying to find content that he can bring into canon. And even if I don't like how he does it sometimes, he's really the only one who still cares about the original Star Wars in Disney. I mean, take a look at some of these new projects that Disney is trying to make. It's completely detached from any other period in the Star Wars history.
Let the past die.
They don't want any baggage because they're fucking cowards. And cowards make terrible art because they're too afraid to live a life meaningful enough to inspire them to make good art in the first place. And it's about time this happens, guys. I mean, Star Wars fans like Mandalorians are not as plentiful as they used to be. There are other games in town. The streaming wars has opened up the possibility of anything becoming a franchise. Star Wars fans are unique. I mean, most of you are grown men and women who like wearing armor and waving laser swords around in your free time. It's just that one group likes the person holding the laser sword to have purple hair, and the other group likes to keep their helmet on when they're doing the dirty. I mean, at the end of the day, you are all still Star Wars fans and not stupid Trekkies with their weird utopian society. You guys might disagree on specific pieces of the lore, but let's be honest, ever since the fandom split apart, ever since The Purge, I think we've all felt a little less happy, a bit more empty. I mean, remember when the Star Wars fandom was larger, bigger, more inclusive, and not just in the progressive use of the word? I mean, inclusive also of the old fans who, like the children of the watch, don't deserve to be isolated. And yes, while some of them hold reprehensible, beliefs and views, it helps no one to keep them isolated and unchallenged. Yes, diversity is great, and strong characters that are well written who happen to be female or a minority, that's awesome as well. It might not be easy to talk to someone who you believe has disgusting beliefs. It might not be easy to listen to them and try to show them respect, but aren't these the kind of people you should be targeting in the first place? I mean, do you really believe in the values you espouse, or do you just like being in a group of people who all believe the same thing and you guys can circle jerk each other off until, I don't know, someone finishes? Because once you see a person for who they are, not the views they hold, when you understand why they've become the way they are, you'll either be filled with love or pity for how hateful they've become. And it takes courage and honor to live like this. And not surprisingly, these are the core values of Mandalorian culture. And at the end of the day, we are all Star Wars fans, and more importantly, we are all humans. And so my heart fills with joy seeing groups like the Children of the Watch reunite with the modern Mandalorians, because at the end of the day,
Mandalore has always been too powerful for any enemy to defeat. It is always our own division that destroys us.